Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. Salty Ginger Talk is a podcast for people that want to learn something new or make themselves a little bit better every day. So if you're a returning listener or viewer, thanks for coming back. It's good to see you again. And if you're new, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. So today's podcast episode, we're going to do something a little bit different. We did an episode like this previously, and we got a lot of comments about people liking it and finding it interesting. And so we're doing another episode similar to the one we did previously. And this is tracing back the origins of common phrases or phrases that we use today that originated a long time ago. So we always find it interesting to see where things come from and kind of understand the meanings, the original meanings of things, or what developed them. For example, we heard, and I couldn't find this anywhere, but the state of Illinois in the 1800s made it illegal to serve ice cream sodas on Sundays. So the shops that sold ice cream sodas got around this by simply selling ice cream alone and not ice cream sodas on Sunday. And they called it a Sunday. So you would order a Sunday and they would give it to you. So that's how we came up with the term for a Sunday. That's not in our episode, by the way, but I heard it over the weekend, and that's what made me think about doing another episode like this because we did get a lot of positive comments on the last episode that we did on the origins of phrases. So I found that interesting. Sunday is actually from Illinois making ice cream sodas illegal. So they just sold ice cream and called it a Sunday. So there you go. So let's dive into the stuff we actually did research on. We heard that one anecdotally in a video that we heard this weekend. So the first phrase is armed to the teeth. So the definition they gave was being overly prepared or too well equipped. I always think about armed to the teeth as someone carrying a whole bunch of weapons, a whole bunch of guns, or really ready to go into battle. And so that's, as it turns out, that's where it came from. So the origin, the most likely origin, is from 17th century pirates who wanted to make sure they never ran out of ammunition. Because remember, they had single shot weapons, and so they'd take a shot, they'd have to reload, take a shot again. So if you're getting ready to go into battle, you don't want to shoot, miss, have one gun, and have your enemy have the draw on you and not be able to defend yourself. So what the pirates did was they had a gun in each hand. They would also keep a spare gun in general. They would keep a third gun in a pocket somewhere that they could get to it quickly. And if all else failed, they held a knife in their teeth. And so armed to the teeth comes from, hey, I got all my guns ready just in case. I'm going to hold this knife in my teeth in case I got to pull it out and defend myself in this battle. So we thought that one was cool. Everybody loves a pirate. Everyone loves a pirate story, especially Rachel Maddow. I don't know if you caught her wacko analysis after the election happened, but she's talking about being pirates. No, I don't know. You can make it make sense to me if you watch it and make it make sense to me. Congratulations, because you're better than me. I couldn't figure that one out. So that was the first phrase right there. The next phrase we researched is basket case. So the definition for basket case is a thing or person considered useless or not able to cope. We always think of basket case as someone that's like off their rocker, someone that's like not playing with a full deck of cards, someone that's not thinking clearly, someone that has some mental challenges that they need some help on. So this one actually does not go back to the mental state of somebody, but in fact, this phrase came from soldiers in particular in World War One who lost their limbs. So the first time anybody saw this or could trace it back was to 1919. So there were rumors that limbs of soldiers who had lost their limbs, their arm, their leg in battle arrived in the hospital in baskets. So like someone walks in with a basket of arms and legs. So there's a major general M.W. Ireland was the first to refer to these as basket cases in his bulletin to express that they had not seen the said baskets. So they were waiting for these limbs to come in and had not seen it. He put it down in writing. That's the earliest they can trace it back to was this 1919 memo from this World War One general. So basket case, not originally meant for mental issues, but soldiers who lost their limbs, those limbs were transported back to the hospital in these baskets. Next, lie off the handle. So the definition to become suddenly enraged. Full disclosure, we have been accused of flying off the handle multiple times in our life. We will plead the fifth on whether we think we're guilty or not in those instances, but we're very familiar with this phrase, flying off the handle. So this originates back to the 1800s when axes were made by, you took the axe head and you drove the handle up into it, and then you basically pounded a wedge into it to split the handle wider than the hole that was in the axe head, and you used that axe. Well, some axes were very poorly made, so that when you would swing the axe head would fly off the handle. Obviously, a dangerous situation, especially if you're out cutting wood with people. I've cut my fair share of wood. We heated our house. This is actually a funny story. So, we heated our house with a wood stove. I grew up in like a 1,500 square foot ranch house. I have three sisters. My mom and my dad were there. So there was six of us in a 3 bedroom, 1,500 square foot ranch house. And we heated it exclusively with a wood stove. And this house was in Oregon. And in Oregon, you can get a $10 permit and go out to certain areas of the forest and literally cut down trees and use them for firewood. So that's what we did every summer. We got together with 2 or 3 other families and we would go cut this wood. We would drop it off at everybody's house. And then my job at our house was to split and stack all of this wood. So I've used lots of axes, lots of mauls, lots of splitting mauls, those kind of things. And I never had the axe handle fly off on me. But I actually bought that house from my parents. And I went out in the garage after we bought it, and there was a breaker that was marked ceiling heat that had been turned off because my dad was so cheap. He didn't want to pay for the ceiling heat. He just had free labor in me. I don't know, free is probably not true because I ate like a horse and I was expensive to hang around because I played a lot of sports. But he had labor that he could command to do this work every year, and so that's how we heated our house. Turns out the whole time there was heat in the ceiling that we could have been using, and we did not. So fly off the handle. Axe flies off the handle. That's where it came from. Next, kick the bucket. So kick the bucket is to die, to pass away, to drop dead. Now, this originated in the 16th century, and we heard it both ways. So we heard, well, so let's do the definition. We heard two different versions of this definition. So during the 16th century, butchers would slaughter animals by hanging them on a wooden beam because when you slaughter an animal, you want to drain the blood out of it because it makes it easier to process and it's a more sanitary way to process the animal. And so when the animal was butchered, when the initial kill was made, they were suspended from this beam, and we heard two things: that it would either kick that beam, and that beam was called a bucket, and so the animal would kick the bucket right before it died, or there was a bucket placed under the animal to catch the blood that was going to come out because they generally like cut their throats to bleed them out. It's much more humane process now. At least in cows, they get like a 22 right in the forehead and they're dead instantly. They never know what happens. But in olden times, in the 1600s, the animal would either kick the beam up top or kick the bucket down below that had been put there to catch the blood. And the term kick the bucket originated from those activities. So we thought that one was kind of interesting. Apologies to any of our vegan or vegetarian friends out there who are not into eating animals. We think animals are delicious. We respect your choice, but we respect our choice too. And we're going to have chicken and steak for lunch and dinner today. So there you go. Kick the bucket. Next one, ride shotgun. So riding shotgun. Right now it's cool to ride in the passenger seat of the car. Any of us that were teenagers back in the 80s when a car meant freedom, everybody knows what shotgun is, very common thing. So to ride in the front passenger seat of a vehicle. But where the phrase to ride shotgun originated was driving stagecoaches in the Wild West. So we've all seen the movies with stagecoach robberies or heard the stories of the stagecoach robberies. Those were legit. They really happened. So the driver would ride and steer the carriage or the stagecoach, and whoever sat next to him would carry a shotgun so that if people came up trying to rob the coach or stop the coach, it was the shotgun rider's job to defend the stagecoach. So it literally was riding with a shotgun next to the driver. So we found that one pretty interesting, and we have rode shotgun many times in our life. Next one we found was rub someone the wrong way. So, boy, that guy really rubs me the wrong way. That gal really rubs me the wrong way. To annoy or bother another person is the definition that we saw. So, this one came from colonial times when some Americans would have servants or they would do it themselves. And the servants would rub the floorboards because they didn't have varnish and all the things that finish wood now. So you had to take care of your floors or they would deteriorate and rot and they would rot out from your house. Well, the way the grain runs on those floorboards, which were largely hardwood, oak, teak, those kinds of things, they weren't pine. Cherry wood is also hard. But if you rub the wrong way, it would result in the formation of streaks and make your floors look bad. So it ruined the floorboards and annoyed the homeowner. So they would say, don't rub it the wrong way. That translated to a person you didn't like very much because they rubbed you the wrong way. They annoyed you. So that's where it came from. Next was skeleton in the closet or skeletons in the closet, a secret someone has that they're embarrassed about, right? So we've all got skeletons in our closet. It's funny, my wife and I have been married for 30 plus years, and we always joke that if you've ever seen the movie The War of the Roses, it's about a bad divorce that ends very badly at the end of the movie. And we always joke that The War of the Roses looks like child's play to what anything would look like if we ever wound up divorcing because we've been together for so long. We know each other so well. We know everybody's deep, dark, dirty secrets. And it would be nuclear if anything ever happened between us. Good news for us is we said, till death do we part. And that's what we meant. So we're not going to have to worry about that. But skeleton in the closet, a secret that someone is embarrassed about. In the UK, they passed a law, and the reason they passed the law is where this phrase comes from. In 1832, it's called the Anatomy Act. And it prevents you, it makes it illegal to rob graves because before that act, grave robbers would steal skeletons out of graves and they would sell them to medical schools. If the medical school was being raided, they would take the skeletons and try to hide them in a closet so that they didn't get confiscated, so that they could keep the skeletons for the anatomy classes they used them for their medical students. So the teachers would hide the skeletons in the closet. You don't want someone to find out about it. That's where skeleton in the closet originated from. So thought that one was pretty cool, both interesting, cool, and macabre all at the same time. So interesting phrase. Next, straight from the horse's mouth. So that's to get information directly from a reliable source. How do you know this? I got it straight from the horse's mouth. Where did you hear that? I heard it straight from the horse's mouth. So this goes back to when horses were a much bigger deal before cars. So they were used for transportation, they were used for work on farms, they were used for a lot of different things. Largely for show now. We're not saying that horses aren't used for work, but it was a much bigger deal back in the day. So when you would go to buy a horse, you would want to know some things about the horse. How old was it? What was its medical history? What was its lineage? Was it going to be a good investment for you? Would you get a lot of mileage out of it? And so people would say things about the horse. One of the ways they tried to verify the things they were told was by looking in the horse's mouth and looking at their teeth, because their teeth were supposedly a pretty good indicator of their age and overall health. So if you wanted to get the straight skinny on if the horse was healthy or not, you went and looked in its mouth. So it came straight from the horse's mouth. We thought that one was pretty cool. So yeah, that one's good. The next one we found was turn a blind eye. So that's to ignore facts or situations deliberately. Many would argue that the Democrats turned a blind eye to Joe Biden's cognitive decline during his presidency, and it really came back to haunt them during the election. Others would argue Republicans turned a blind eye to Trump's bad behavior, and it did not come back to bite them, and they're incredulous that someone who was convicted of felonies, someone who, in their view, incited an insurrection, someone in their view who wouldn't turn over power peacefully, was reelected and nominated and reelected from the opposing party. So ignoring facts or situations deliberately. We see a lot of that in politics. Turn a blind eye. So that originated from Admiral Horatio Nelson. He was a British naval hero, and he had one eye that was blind. So there was a time where the British forces were trying to get him to stop his attack on a Danish fleet. Well, he didn't want to stop. So he had a telescope, the old periscope, telescope that the sailors used to see distances, and he put it up to his blind eye. So then he said, "Well, I didn't see any signal. We're going to keep going." And it turns out he continued his attack and he won the battle against the Danish. So that's where turn a blind eye came from. It was the deliberate uh, ignoring of an order from the Navy and to continue the attack by Horatio Nelson. So we thought that was both interesting and cool and pretty badass to ignore the orders and then just go win the battle anyways. So pretty interesting. The next one we found was to pull someone's leg. So this is to trick or to fool someone. Turns out this one was quite literal. So it stems from a method that thieves in the streets of London used in the 18th and 19th century, which was the 17 and 1800s. So they would work in pairs, and one person in the pair would be the tripper upper, and it was their job to trip an unsuspecting victim with a cane or a rope or a piece of twine or whatever. The other thief robs the victim when they're on the ground. So pulling your leg was literally grabbing your leg and pulling you down to the ground so that their partner could steal your stuff. So pulling someone's leg now means a trick or fool someone. Oh, you're pulling my leg. Don't tell me that. But it is originally from street thieves in London in the 17 and 1800s. So there you go. Up next, sticking with the limbs, cost an arm and a leg. Something costs an arm and a leg. Well, that's expensive. It costs an arm and a leg. So this originates from back when portraits were a big thing, pre-photography. So to memorialize yourself, your family, whatever, you'd have someone draw a portrait of yourself. This was in the 18th century. It originated in the 18th century, the 1700s. How many people in each picture didn't matter as much as the limbs because the limbs were hard. They would charge you more if you wanted your limbs painted instead of a bust, instead of just the neck up picture. If you wanted your whole body painted, the price increased as the portrait became larger and included your arms. And if you really wanted to pay a lot of money, you'd have them do your whole body and include your legs. So costing an arm and a leg was getting a portrait that had both your arms and your legs included in the portrait. So that's where that phrase came from. So that one was very interesting as well. Next, we found a jaywalker. He's a jay. So why are you walking across the street, not at a traffic signal, not in a crosswalk, cutting across the street? You're a jaywalker. Why are you doing that? Where did that phrase come from? So it turns out that jaybirds, the actual birds called jays, they would fly out of the forest and into the cities. They would become disoriented and confused, and they would kind of wander kind of aimlessly across the streets or through the streets. So if a human being had the same or similar behavior, they were called a jaywalker, just like the birds, the jaybirds. So that's where that one came from. Next up, no spring chicken. That guy's no spring chicken. Joe Biden's no spring chicken. Donald Trump, no spring chicken. Nancy Pelosi, no spring chicken. Mitch McConnell, no spring chicken. So someone's past their prime or no longer young. So this originated in New England, and chicken farmers typically sold their chickens in the spring because they were in their prime in the spring. So if a chicken wasn't sold in the spring and got sold later, it was an older chicken. Therefore, it was no spring chicken. It was old. So that's where that phrase came from. We just started applying it to people instead of just chickens. So pretty interesting. The next phrase was go cold turkey. So to quit or give something up all at once. No run up, no kind of tick down, no just I'm quitting right now. I gave up cigarettes, cold turkey. I gave up caffeine, cold turkey, whatever you're giving up. And that refers to, it was developed because drug addicts a lot of times have pale skin with goosebumps when they're going through withdrawals. And those goosebumps look like the skin of a turkey. So when you give up something that you're addicted to, your skin begins to look like a turkey's during the withdrawal period. Therefore, the phrase originated that you're going cold turkey. So you know it's coming. You just decided you've had enough and you're going to make it work. The last phrase that we found was waking up on the wrong side of the bed. So waking up grumpy or unpleasant. I've been accused of this. I'm not a morning guy. I like my time. I like my freedom. I like my quiet. So does my wife. It works out good. So we both get up and we rarely just jump out of bed, turn cartwheels or start dancing, or we go our own separate ways and kind of wake up a little bit. And we like it that way. So Someone waking up on the wrong side of the bed is grumpy or unpleasant. This developed in Roman times, actually, for some reason, and I couldn't figure out. I never saw why they thought this or what the genesis of this thought was. But it was bad luck to get out on the left side of the bed. And so, if you got out on the wrong side of the bed, the right side, or the left side, I'm sorry, it was thought that you were going to have a bad day. So if you got out of bed on the wrong side of the bed, the left side of the bed, then you were going to have a bad day. And that's where that phrase originated from. So we thought it was cool. Little lighter topic today on our podcast. We got a lot of positive comments last time we did it. So we did another one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. James always puts it up over here. Don't forget to go to our website, saltygingertalk.com. All of our podcast episodes are on there. You can subscribe to our newsletter that we publish every weekday on our website, and all of our links to our social media content are on our website as well. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on our podcast on whatever platform you consume it on. We sure appreciate the support if you're able to do that. Everybody have a great week, and we will see you next time.